The St. Louis Blues had a huge win over the Boston Bruins last night. And let me just say that this win, while it doesn't do much in terms of standings, I think this was a win that the team desperately needed against a team that they previously beat in another big game. I'm going to talk more about this win coming up here on Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I just want to let you know that I was planning on doing an episode yesterday. Unfortunately, I was traveling back from vacation and my plane got delayed by a lot. It was very annoying and I could not film while at the airport. I didn't have my microphone handy and it would have been really bad video to have me talking in an airport with a bunch of people behind me. It just wouldn't have been good. So we're going to do another episode coming up this weekend instead to make up for yesterday's episode. So you'll still get your 5 episodes a week. Today, I'm going to talk about the huge win over Boston, talking about their road trip as a whole, like overall, and then thoughts on the Blues standing pat for the trade deadline. Some more thoughts on it. So a lot to dive into today for, it's my first episode of the week, but episode of the week. So I want to let you know before we dive into anything, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. I hope everybody's having a good Tuesday today, as it is Tuesday, March 12th. And I'm going to talk now about the Blues' 5-1 victory over those Boston Bruins. There is no doubt that Boston is one of the best teams in the NHL this season. With 91 points, they're actually in second behind the Florida Panthers in their division, the Atlantic. But they were taking on the St. Louis Blues, who have been struggling a little bit. So it was a big game for the Blues because, again, just to remind you about this road trip, they defeated Philadelphia in a shootout. So they got the 2 points there. Then they went to New York against the Islanders. And while they did have the lead, they ended up losing that game despite being up 2-0. And then they lost to the Devil. No, they lost. Was it the Devils? Everything's all mixed up in my head, right? It was, it was the Devils that they lost to. And then it was the Rangers that they got shut out by. And then they went to take on the Bruins. So they only had 2 points heading into this game from this road trip. So not the best at all. And this game was clear that the Blues were determined to win. Now, was it because Pat Maroon was on the Boston Bruins now, which I think is so strange, right? And and again, this is not a Bruins podcast. This is a Blues podcast. But with Pat being one of our guys and, helping us win that cup, and I still love Patty Maroon. He did say when he went to the Boston Bruins after the trade deadline, I think they all hate me here. And, that sucks. You can't help the team that you get traded to. And, of course, it's the team that you ended up beating in the Stanley Cup Finals and talked bad about. But it is what it is because the Blues won and defeated the Bruins 5-1. And this was a huge, huge game. To start off on the first period, Kasperi Kapanen, who we all know has been struggling a little bit, did score his 5th goal of the season, assisted by Torrey Krug and Brandon Saad. Honestly, big goal by Cappy, starting off the game right, so I was happy for him. But most impressively was the Robert Thomas power play goal. Now, this goal was what I like to call a beauty, and this really did, in many ways, get me back on the track of thinking, you know what? With Robert Thomas on the St. Louis Blues, anything is possible. So I was happy about that. Then you have a goal from Kevin Hayes, who previously had his first goal in 19 games against the Philadelphia Flyers last Monday. And he's got his 12th goal of the season and assisted by Cappy and a familiar face, Matthew Kessel. So another interesting thing about this game is, and I also want to talk about it, Zachary Dean We all know Zach Dean was one of my favorite prospects, and he finally was caught up. So, again, happy about that aspect of it. I'm a huge Zach Dean fan. I've been saying that on the podcast this whole entire time. I just wanted to throw that out there that Zach Dean was called up to play. So, another goal. So, the Blues then get another goal in that second period, and that is by the one and only Brandon Saad, and it was assisted by Hazy. It was a nice feed from Hayes. So Saad now gets his 19th of the season. The Blues now have a 4-0 lead. Now, in good old Bruins fashion, it's not a game of pass. If I was gonna say pasta, but Pasternak doesn't score, so then the Bruins cut the chances of this being a shutout. Even though Joel Hofer, and I'm going to talk about this at the end of my little recap, very impressive. To finish off with an empty netter, the Bruins did pull their goalie like 8 minutes remaining in the period, which I thought was kind of like bold. Okay, bold. And of course, Alexei Trichenko took advantage of that and was able to give the Blues an empty netter, giving them a final score of 5-1. Now, let's talk about Joel Hofer and why I am so impressed with him. The Boston Bruins had 37 shots, okay, on goal. Hofer made 36 saves, like unbelievable, okay? Hofer was on fire. Now, I was a little surprised when they started Hofer against the Bruins. I thought maybe they would start Binnington, but having Joel Hofer get that win, especially like a team over the Boston Bruins who are so dominant, one of the best teams in the league, is a huge, huge, huge thing for him. And Hofer even said after the game, that's a good team over there. Hopefully we can keep this going when we get home. And I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, they're going to be playing the LA Kings tomorrow night. Today's Tuesday, by the way. So Wednesday night, they host the Kings. And right now, the Blues, they're so desperate because right now, and I know what you're going to say, Hale, are you not looking at just, the Central? No, we've come to the point in the NHL season, and I knew this was going to happen, where we're going to be having to look at the entire Western Conference, okay? Because right now I'm thinking wild card spot. I mean, because that's the only way the Blues are going to get in. So you have to kind of think that way. And when it comes to the wild card spot, you're going to laugh when I say this because it's like unbelievable how much things in hockey can change in a snap of a finger. The Vegas Golden Knights are above the Blues right now in the standings with 75 points. The Blues have 69. So it's Golden Knights and then St. Louis. Okay? Golden Knights and then St. Louis. They play the LA Kings tomorrow. Again, huge because hear me out. At this point, I'm just expecting the Predators to end up somehow getting first place. Like, who would have thought? Okay? Who would have thought? The Predators are at 78 points, right? And with how everything is right now with, the standings, technically, if they were in the Pacific, they would be able to get a solidified playoff spot. They would be the 3 seed, but they're not, okay? Central Division, baby. The Colorado Avalanche have 85 points. So that the Predators continue on their winning ways, they'd have to catch up to the Avalanche with 85. I don't think the Blues are going to get a playoff spot in that sense. What I think is a possibility, okay, is if Golden Knights, 75 points, the Kings have 77. Knights win, Kings lose. Knights then win another game, surpass the Kings. Then the Kings drop down, and the Blues can pass them. So what am I saying in all this? I am saying that there is still a possibility that the St. Louis Blues, call me crazy, call me hopeful, call me what you want. You cannot say that I am losing hope just yet. Now, maybe I was a little while ago. Oh my God, Haley, change your opinion. Yes, that is life. That is called being a sports fan. You can change your opinion, okay? No one is going to hold that against you if you decide to say, you know what? I think this team has what it takes. Nobody should be coming at anybody for that. I know some people don't like that. Personally, it is what it is. And I'm going to talk more about this road trip, things that I like, things that I didn't like, and how I think this team can turn things around a big hopefully on that one because like they kind of need to turn it around if they want to get into the playoffs. Again, ask me any of your St. Louis Blues questions in the comment section. I am live on YouTube. But before I get into that, I'm going to tell you about my friends over at Sleeper. It's already past the halfway point of the season, and we're nearing the end, St. Louis Blues fans. And right now, we need to continue on winning. But regardless of where we are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey. Because of Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. And this is where you have to take the players, right? Such as a Robert Thomas. You're going to take Brandon Sauter right now because he's been playing really good hockey. Hey, Joel Hofer even, to record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Blues fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. So now that we talked about, the game and the standing, I want to talk about some things that I have observed through these games, right? The game against Philadelphia, obviously that was the game that I was physically at. I was able to interview about 8 different Blues players. Again, I will have some of these interviews. I know I'm going to have Kyra's interview posted this week because it kind of goes along with, the playoffs. But a lot of the other interviews I'm going to have sporadically come up throughout the show with weeks coming. So stay tuned for that. It's on video, so you're going to be actually able to see the guys, which is cool. But I was able to talk to these players. I was able to talk to Coach Bannister. I was able to really get a feel. I was able to talk to guys like a Jamie Rivers, right, who does the color commentating. I was able to really get to have conversations about the state of the team with the people that know it the best, which is themselves. And the number one thing right now that's the Blues' biggest problem, it's not team chemistry. They have great team chemistry, okay? It's not being lazy. They had a morning skate scheduled at 11 a.m. Eastern time. They were on the ice at 10:30, which is 30 minutes beforehand. I have never really seen that where a team, not even just like one player, but collectively as a team, they all decided to go out early just to get some reps in. And they were working. Sometimes during morning skates, it's like, you're kind of goofing off a little bit. Not these guys were hard at work. So I don't think it's the laziness. I don't think that there's one specific reason as to why they're maybe not performing as well. Maybe it has to do with the players on their team, and maybe bringing in some of the younger guys will help in that sense. Because I've been watching a lot of T-Birds hockey, okay? I still am like a huge Thunderbirds fan, and they're the only team I would drive 4 hours to see, which I did already this season. But I think when you have some of the younger guys, right? Like you bring up a Zachary Bolduc, you now have Zach Dean up, my Zachs are up. I know the Bidden boys, but the point is, when you have these players that are young players that are coachable players that can really help speed up this team because they are fast, some of these guys. It's going to help the Blues overall, but right now you're in a position where the NHL is a really fast-paced game, okay? Back in the days, it used to be a little bit slower. Now it's a fast-paced game. I think that the biggest problem that the Blues had, one against the Rangers, it wasn't like they were out of the game, despite the fact that the Rangers did have a 2-0 lead after the first period. It was more of the fact of they just couldn't get the puck behind the net, but they were still playing good hockey. And I know what you're thinking, Haley, with that score, how could that still be good hockey? It can still be good hockey, even if the result isn't a result that you want. I don't think anyone's going to say, oh, yeah, the Blues played an awful first period. I think the rest of the game was sloppy, but I don't think that first period was sloppy. I think that the Blues just are playing against some really good teams. Now, you can also make the argument, Haley, they lost against the Islanders when they had a 2-0 lead. Okay, fine, valid. But again, anything. I mean, this team is just so inconsistent. And I could point to a million reasons. I don't think it's the goaltending. I don't. I think that Binnington, I mean, he's not been playing the way that I hoped for the season. I don't think that he's a bad goal. I think he's still a very good goalie. And I respect him. And again, I owe that Stanley Cup to him. So nothing bad about Binner, but it's also the defense that's in front of him. And, when I spoke to Jordan Binghamton, you're going to hear about interviews soon I had with him, but just to kind of sum it up a little bit, we did talk about how important defense has been this season because it has kept him alive some nights. And they have been stepping up. I think having a guy like Matt Kessel has helped so much, okay? But Binnington is a great goalie, but most importantly, he talked to me about, Joel Hofer and how phenomenal he's been in net. And I don't think anybody was really expecting Hofer to come in because at the beginning of the season, so many doubts surrounding Hofer, right? Oh, is he going to be able to play hard? Is he going to be able to, actually keep up in the NHL? Because the AHL is a whole different game, but he has been phenomenal in net. So Hofer is one of those guys that really has stepped up. And I'm so happy that he's a part of this team organization. But then people are so quick to blame players like a Jordan Kyrou and a Kevin Hayes. And I'm like, come on. Like these guys, sure, they may not be everyone's cup of tea, but they're not bad hockey players, okay? I don't like that. I don't like ganging up on certain. Now I can also say I think we should have traded some of these guys 100%, but we have them. We're going to have to deal with it. It is what it is, okay? Before I talk about the next thing I'm going to talk about, because I know everybody has different opinions, I have a question for you. How many Blues games have you been to this season? Or is there a Blues game that you still want to go to this season? And the reason why I'm asking is I have a question that has nothing to do with any of these things listed on the podcast. I'm just curious about something. All right, time to talk to you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only. Available to U.S. customers. So the Blues didn't do anything. Actually, I lied. They did one thing, and it was with the T-Birds. Subban to Columbus for future considerations. Oh, thank you, Doug. No, everybody has different opinions on this one about what the Blues should have actually done. I'm surprised, honestly, that nothing happened. I actually am surprised, and it's still a couple days later, and I'm like, wait, is this real? And the reason why I'm saying that, I don't want any of our guys to go, right? Like I know when Colton Parayko's name was brought up, I was like, oh my gosh, please do not trade Parayko. I think he's like the best defender. I'm just a huge Colton Parayko fan. In terms of Buchnevich, yeah, I don't know if I was like surprised about that. I think that you also want to get the best value. And I don't think that's a crazy thing either, because when you have a player, right, like some of these guys are going to be unrestricted free agents soon. And this is just a general thing. You want to at least get some value because they're probably not going to be here in the following year. So it's like, might as well get some value now. But, and I hate to be this person, clearly other teams didn't maybe see the value and they weren't offering anything good. in return. And you're not going to just trade someone to get them off your roster without like a reason as to why, unless you're trying to like, cut down the cap. But I don't think that right now anyone's like, yeah, like let's trade some of our good players away. And like no one's thinking that at the moment, right? You want something in return. Yeah, I was surprised. I think a lot of people were surprised because of how much the Blues have been in the headlines about a potential trade happening. Am I shocked though? I can see surprised and shocked are different. Shocked is like, I didn't see that coming. Surprised is like, oh, I maybe it's like the same actually. I don't know what the word would be, but I wasn't like, like I kind of could see that coming because all these other teams in the NHL a couple of days before the deadline were making moves already. And for some reason, I don't know if anyone's also noticed this, the trade deadline really shouldn't be called the trade deadline. It should be called like the trade deadline eve because that's when all the moves usually happen. It's like a couple of days beforehand. That's what I've been observing these past couple of years. But teams were making moves. The Blues didn't. Obviously, Doug Armstrong, even though we sometimes come at him, he's not stupid. Like, he's not going to make a trade that doesn't have value for the Blues. And I think that right now you have the team that you have, and it is what it is. Darkness did say the only guy that I'm surprised we didn't move was Scandella. Yeah, I was, that's another name too. Again, I forgot about him because he's a forgettable player. Not to be that person, but he has been. I was surprised even with some of the younger guys. I mean, draft picks are so important. And I've said this before, the trade deadline is the time where you can really get those draft picks, right? The offseason, teams are not as reluctant to give up draft picks because it's like they're not desperate, right? Contending teams or teams that are, in a significantly different spot than the Blues are in, they're like, okay, how can we win the cup? And they want really good players to help them do that, which means that they're more willing to give away some of their draft picks, right? They're more willing to give away some assets that maybe they don't deem as valuable in the moment, but a team like the Blues would. So I was a little surprised about that. I don't know how I feel about them standing pat, though. And it's been since Friday, and I'm still kind of like, it's a weird thing, right? Because there's pros and cons. A part of me commends Doug Armstrong for, hey, listen, you didn't think you got enough value out of these players. But then another part of me was like, well, how hard did you try? How hard did you try to sell these players? And that's where my question goes into with, is he the right GM for this team? Now, I don't think so, but I'm not the one that's making decisions. I'm just a fan talking about the Blues. But what do you think? And let me know down in the comments below when this video is officially posted onto YouTube, because I want to have the discussion with you. Do you think Doug Armstrong is the right GM for the St. Louis Blues? That being said, I will talk to you tomorrow. And like always, let's go Blues.